What if Elrond had pushed Isildur into the fire? What if they had thrown the ring into the sea? What if the eagles had just flown it to Mordor? What if Boromir had made it home? And what if Gandalf had taken the ring himself? What if Bilbo had killed Gollum in that cave? And also, here's one more what if for you. What if you subscribed? Worth it, I promise. Let us start with the one that started all this. Picture the scene properly, because the films rush it. Sauron has fallen. The siege is over. Isildur has just cut the ring from a Dark Lord's hand with the broken shard of his father's sword, and Elrond and Círdan are standing there with him at the edge of the cracks of doom, telling him to throw it in, and he refuses. And they let him. So why not push him? He is one man, exhausted, standing on a ledge above a volcano, being counseled by two of the oldest and wisest beings in Middle-earth. Physically, it is nothing. Elrond could have done it. And here is my answer, and I want to give you the honest version rather than the satisfying one. It would not have worked, and it would have made everything worse. Two problems. The first is the same problem everybody in this story runs into. The ring does not simply fall neatly into the fire because you shove the man holding it. It is in his fist. It is the most powerful object ever made, and it is actively, intelligently working to preserve itself. And it is doing that at the exact spot on the planet where its power is absolute. The idea that Isildur goes over the edge and the ring politely goes with him is the optimistic reading. The realistic one is that a struggle starts on a narrow ledge above lava between a man who will not let go and an elf who has now, from Isildur's point of view, tried to murder him. Second problem, and this is the bigger one. Think about who Isildur was at that moment. He was not just a man. He was the heir of Elendil, the last king of Númenor's line, and he had just personally defeated Sauron. The elves and men had fought that war together as the last alliance, the greatest alliance in the history of Middle-earth. Elrond murdering the newly crowned king of men in front of witnesses, seconds after their shared victory, that alliance does not survive. And I said this in the comment section when the question came up, and I still think it is right. You do not get a peaceful Fourth Age out of that. You get a war between elves and men, in a world where Sauron's armies are scattered but not gone, and where the ring is either at the bottom of a volcano or in somebody's pocket, and nobody can prove which. And the third thing, which is the part I find most interesting, Elrond is not immune. He is one of the wisest beings alive, and he refuses the ring later at the council in the safety of his own house with the fate of the world explained to him. But at the cracks of doom, standing over the body of a man he just killed with the ring lying on the stone in front of him, that is a completely different test. Tolkien was clear that nobody passes that test in that place. So the honest answer to the question that started this video is that Elrond does not push Isildur because he cannot, and because on some level he knows exactly what happens next if he tries. Which is a far darker answer than he was being polite. Right, so if Mount Doom is such a nightmare, why not do the obvious thing? Sail out into the middle of the ocean, drop it over the side, and go home. Nobody is diving to the bottom of the Great Sea to fetch it. And here is my favorite thing about this question. It is not a fan theory. It is raised in the book at the Council of Elrond by Glorfindel, who is, and I cannot stress this enough, an elf lord who came back from the dead and once made a ringwraith turn and flee just by showing up. This is not a stupid person making a stupid suggestion. He puts it on the table seriously, and Gandalf shoots it down, and his reasons are so good that they close the door completely. First, seas change. That sounds like a small objection until you remember what Middle-earth actually is. This is a world where an entire continent, Beleriand, was drowned at the end of the First Age. Númenor, an island the size of a small country, was pulled under the water in a single day. The map of this world has been redrawn by catastrophe more than once. What is seabed now is coastline later. Second, and this is the one that ends the argument, Sauron is immortal. You are not hiding the ring from a man. You are hiding it from a being who existed before the world was made and who has, quite literally, all the time there is. He does not need to find it this century. He needs to find it eventually. Every hiding place is temporary against something that never dies. And third, there is the little detail that Middle-earth's deep places are not empty. We have all met the Watcher in the water, that thing outside the gates of Moria that Gandalf himself could not name. If there is something like that in a pond, what exactly do you think is at the bottom of the ocean? Tolkien built a world where the deep places are full of things older than the story. Throwing your problem down there is not disposal, it is delivery. So no, the sea does not work. And the reason I love that this is in the book is that Tolkien is telling you, through Gandalf, that he thought of it. He always thought of it. Every clever shortcut you can come up with, somebody at that council already raised, and there is a reason it fails. And here we are, the most asked question in the history of fantasy. What if the eagles had just flown it there? There are entire comment sections, entire friendships that have died on this hill, and I want to give it a proper answer rather than a dismissive one because I think the dismissive one is lazy, and I think the question deserves better. The lazy answer is, it would have been a short book. True, but useless, so let us do it properly. The first thing to understand is what the eagles actually are, because nearly everyone gets this wrong. They are not birds. They are not a taxi service that Gandalf keeps forgetting about. The eagles are the servants of Manwë, the king of the Valar, the closest thing this world has to an archangel. They are messengers of a higher power, and they intervene at specific moments and then leave. They are not under anyone's command. Gandalf cannot order them to do anything. He can ask, as a friend, and Gwydir owes him a personal debt, and that is the entire basis of every time they show up. So already the plan is not hire the eagles, it is ask a divine being to fly the most corrupting object in existence directly into the most heavily defended airspace in the world. Which brings us to the practical problem. Mordor is not undefended. Sauron has fell beasts. He has an unblinking eye on a tower that is specifically watching for exactly this kind of thing. And an eagle in the sky over an empty black plain is not subtle. The entire strategy of the war, the actual reason it works, is that Sauron cannot conceive of anyone trying to destroy the ring. He assumes it has been taken to Gondor, and that someone powerful is preparing to use it against him. His whole defense is pointed the wrong way. A formation of giant eagles flying straight at Mount Doom tells him precisely what is happening, immediately, and he only needs to be right once. And then the third thing, which for me settles it. Whoever's on that eagle is holding the ring, for hours, in the open, getting closer and closer to the one place where its power is strongest. That is not a stealth mission. That is a slow-motion corruption sequence with a spectacular view. Even the eagles themselves would not be immune. Tolkien's world is very clear that nothing that thinks is immune. So my honest answer is that the eagle plan fails, not because of one thing, but because it inverts every single advantage the actual plan had. It is loud instead of quiet. It is fast instead of patient. It puts the ring in the hands of something powerful instead of something humble. It is the plan Sauron is expecting, and that is why two hobbits walking through a ditch worked, and a flying assault would not have. Okay, so now we move on to Boromir. What if he had taken the ring to Gondor? Let us give Boromir a fair hearing first, because I think he gets an unfair one. Boromir is not a villain. Boromir is a soldier from a city that has been holding the line against Mordor alone for generations, watching his men die in a war nobody in the north seems to care about, and he is sitting in a council in a beautiful elven valley, listening to people explain that the answer is to give the most powerful weapon in the world to a gardener's employer and hope for the best. Of course he pushes back. Anyone would. He tries at Amon Hen. He fails, and it breaks him, and he dies well, and that redemption is one of the best things in the first book. But say he succeeds, he gets the ring and he runs from Minas Tirith. Here is why that is, in my opinion, the fastest possible loss in this entire video. Not the worst outcome, we will get to the worst outcome, but the quickest, because of who is waiting for him at home. Denethor, his father, the steward of Gondor, a man of enormous will and enormous pride, already sliding into despair, and, this is the crucial part, a man who has been secretly looking into a palantir, a seeing stone, which Sauron controls. Denethor thinks he is spying on the enemy. What is actually happening is that Sauron is showing him a carefully curated selection of true things designed to break him. So Boromir arrives in Minas Tirith carrying the One Ring and hands it to a father who is desperate to be loved by him, who is in direct mental contact with Sauron, and who is already convinced the war is lost. Sauron knows within days, maybe hours, and now he knows exactly where it is, and it is sitting inside a fixed city he has already been besieging, held by a man whose mind he has partial access to. He does not even need to be clever, he just needs to knock the walls down, which he was doing anyway. The ring in Gondor is the ring in a box with a label on it. And the tragedy of Boromir is that he was not wrong about the danger. He was wrong about the solution, and he knew it before he died, and he spent his last minutes fighting for the two hobbits he had failed. That is a better character than people give him credit for. Right. Next up is Gandalf. What if he had taken the ring? This is the one where Tolkien himself gives us the answer, and it is not the answer you have heard. Frodo offers Gandalf the ring in Bag End. Just offers it, freely, no trickery, no temptation, a friend handing it over and saying, "Take this, you are wiser than me." And Gandalf recoils like he has been burned. And the version of this everybody knows is that Gandalf would have become a new Dark Lord, which is true, and he says so himself. "Do not tempt me. I would use this ring from a desire to do good, but through me it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine." Fine, we have all heard that. But Tolkien went further in his letters, and this is the part I had never seen properly discussed until I went looking for it. He said that if Gandalf had taken the ring and openly challenged Sauron for it, Gandalf would probably have won. Truly won. Because Sauron was not actually in possession of it, and because Sauron had spent thousands of years spending his own will on dominating inferiors, and he was weaker than people assume. So Gandalf wins the contest. Sauron is defeated. Tolkien says the result for Sauron would have been the same as the ring being destroyed. It is taken from him forever. That is a victory. And then Tolkien writes the line that made me sit up. He said, "The ring and all its works would have endured. It would have been the master in the end." Read that again. Sauron is gone, defeated, finished, and the ring still wins. Because what you have now is a being of enormous power with the best intentions anyone has ever had, holding an object whose entire nature is domination. And Gandalf's plan would not have been to sit quietly in Rivendell. Tolkien describes it. He would have built an empire with great and absolutely subservient generals and armies and engines of war. That is the good outcome. That is Gandalf winning. A benevolent empire with a wizard at the top and everyone below him unable to disobey. And here's why I find this the most chilling scenario in the whole video. Every other what if in this list ends with something obviously bad. Sauron gets it, everyone dies, the world burns. This one ends with a victory parade. Nobody would even know it had gone wrong. They would just notice, slowly over centuries, that nobody said no to Gandalf anymore. That is what the ring does. It does not need you to be evil. It just needs you to be certain. Now let's talk about Galadriel. What if she had taken it? And immediately we get the companion piece, because Galadriel gets the same offer, and it is arguably a harder test. Frodo offers it to her in Lothlorien, and unlike Gandalf, she does not recoil straight away. She stands there, and for a moment she lets herself see it. And what she describes is the most frightening thing anybody says in the entire trilogy. She says she would not be a Dark Lord. She would be beautiful and terrible as the dawn, treacherous as the sea, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. And then she passes the test, as she puts it, and she will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. Notice what she does not say. She does not say she would become evil. She says everyone would love her. That is the horror of it. Gandalf's version of the ring is an empire built on obedience. Galadriel's is worse in a way I find deeply hard to shake. It is worship. Not a tyrant that people resist, a queen that people adore, who cannot be argued with because arguing with her feels wrong. And here is the thing about Galadriel that people forget when they think of her as the serene lady in the woods. She is one of the last of the Noldor who came over the sea from Valinor. She was there at the beginning. She has been in Middle-earth since the First Age, and she came here in the first place because she wanted a realm of her own to rule. That was her ambition, thousands of years before Frodo turned up with a temptation in his pocket. So when he offers her the ring, he is not offering her a random object. He is offering her the exact thing she left paradise to get at the end of an age where everything she built is fading anyway. That is why the scene is so tense. She refuses it, and the cost of refusing it is that she has to accept the fading. Lothlorien ends, her time is over, she sails west. She chooses to lose. And I think that is the single most underrated act of heroism in Lord of the Rings, because there is no battle in it, and nobody sees it happen except one hobbit. Here is one nobody asks, and I think it might be the most interesting question in the video. What if Frodo had just said no? Not at the council, earlier, in Bag End, when Gandalf tells him what the ring is and what has to happen. Frodo is a comfortable, middle-aged, well-off hobbit with a lovely house and a garden and absolutely no reason to walk into Mordor. What if he had said, "I'm sorry, you take it. I am not the person for this"? And the honest answer is that Gandalf could not have made him. He would not have. The entire mission of the Istari was to inspire and counsel, never to compel. The moment Gandalf forces someone, he becomes the thing he was sent to prevent. So Frodo says no, and someone else has to carry it. And who? Not Gandalf, we have covered that. Not Aragorn, he is Isildur's heir, the exact bloodline the ring already succeeded in corrupting once, and Aragorn spends the entire story terrified of that inheritance. Not Boromir, obviously. Merry and Pippin are wonderful and are not carrying that thing to Mordor. It comes down to Sam, or a stranger, and here's what I actually think, and this is where the video gets a bit uncomfortable. I think the quest fails, and I do not think it's close. Because the thing that got Frodo to Mount Doom was not strength or skill, it was that he had already decided in a hobbit hole in the Shire that he would rather carry something unbearable than let it fall on someone else. That decision is made before the journey starts. Everything after it is just endurance. A person who refused at Bag End and got talked into it later is carrying the ring for a different reason, and the ring is extremely good at finding the gap between why you say you're doing something and why you are actually doing it. Which reframes the whole story for me. The moment the war was won was not at the crack of doom. It was a hobbit in his own living room saying, "I will take it, though I do not know the way." Alright, here is the one I promised you. What if Bilbo had killed Gollum? This is the big one. Bilbo, under the Misty Mountains, invisible, sword drawn, standing over Gollum who has no idea he is there. Gollum is between him and the exit, and Gollum has just tried to eat him, so nobody in the world would blame him. And Frodo says it out loud in the book, decades later. What a pity Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance. And Gandalf's answer to that line is the most important thing anybody says in Lord of the Rings. Pity?
It was pity that stayed his hand. Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. My heart tells me Gollum has some part to play yet, and the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. So what happens if he does it? Sauron wins, and not maybe, not probably, Sauron wins, and it is not close. And here is the chain, and it is airtight. Frodo gets to the crack of doom. He always gets there. Sam gets him there. And at the edge, he fails. He puts the ring on and claims it for himself, because Tolkien said plainly that no mortal being could have destroyed the ring standing in that place. Not Frodo, not Aragorn, not anyone. The strength required does not exist. So Frodo stands there with the ring on his finger. Sauron's attention snaps to him instantly, and the Nazgul are already flying. Without Gollum, there is nobody to bite off that finger, nobody to dance on the edge and fall, and the ring goes home, and Middle-earth ends. All of it, the entire war, every death, every act of courage from Helm's Deep to the Pelennor, all of it comes down to whether one hobbit 60 years earlier, in the dark, could bring himself to stab a pitiful creature who had done nothing to him yet. He could not, and he had no idea what he had just done. That is what Gandalf means by even the very wise cannot see all ends. And I'll be honest with you, this is my favorite thing in all of Tolkien, because it is not a message about power or heroism or destiny. It's a much smaller and much harder one. It says you do not get to know what your mercy is for. You will never find out. You just have to do it anyway and trust that it goes somewhere.
Now, here is one that most people have never even heard of. What if Sam had not woken Gollum? And this one is the saddest thing in this entire video, and most people have never even heard of it. On the stairs of Cirith Ungol, late at night, Frodo is asleep and Gollum goes off alone. And he comes back, and Tolkien describes him reaching out and touching Frodo's knee. And for a moment, one moment, the description changes completely. He is described as an old, weary hobbit, not a creature, a hobbit, shrunken by years that have carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and beyond kin, and beyond the fields and streams of youth. Gollum is, in that instant, actually repenting, truly repenting, after 500 years. And Sam wakes up, and Sam sees Gollum with his hands on Frodo and does what any loyal friend would do. He snaps at him, calls him a sneak, accuses him of pawing at his master, and the moment closes. Gollum goes cold, and the description says a green glint comes back into his eyes, and he says, "Nothing, nothing, nice master." And from that second on, he is leading them to Shelob. Tolkien wrote about this specific passage in a letter, and he called it, his words, the most tragic moment in the tale. Because Sam failed to notice the complete change in Gollum's tone and aspect, and Gollum's repentance was blighted, and all of Frodo's pity was in a sense wasted. And then Tolkien goes further and speculates about what might have happened if Gollum had been redeemed. He suggests that a Gollum torn between his love for Frodo and his hunger for the ring might have voluntarily cast himself into the fire, willingly, as a final act of service to the person who treated him like a person. Sit with that for a second. There is a version of this story where the ring is destroyed not by an accident, not by a struggle, but by Smeagol choosing at the end to save the person who treated him like a person. And it does not happen because a gardener who was completely right about Gollum in every other respect woke up at the wrong moment and said the wrong thing. Sam is not the villain here. That is what makes it unbearable. He was protecting his friend. He was correct about the danger, and his loyalty is precisely what closed the only door Gollum ever had.
And we finish with the darkest one, because everything in this video has been leading here. What if Sauron had recovered the ring? Not won a battle, not taken Minas Tirith, actually put it back on his finger. And the answer is worse than most people imagine, because people picture a conquered Middle-earth, burning cities, slave armies, the free peoples wiped out. That is the surface of it. What actually happens is more total than that. With the ring, Sauron is not merely the strongest force in the world. He is restored to what he was before Numenor drowned, and beyond it. The 3 elven rings are immediately exposed. Vilya, Nenya, and Narya were made by Celebrimbor alone and never touched by Sauron, but they are still bound to the one, and the moment he wears it, he sees everything they have done and everyone who wears them. Rivendell falls, Lothlorien falls, not besieged, simply revealed and unmade, and Gandalf is exposed with them because he carries Narya. Then Gondor, which is already outnumbered and only survived because Sauron was distracted. Then Rohan, then the North, then everything. But the part that makes it truly bleak is what comes after the conquest, and this is the bit Tolkien understood better than anyone. Sauron does not want to destroy the world. He never did. He wants to order it. So what you get is not an apocalypse, you get an eternity. A single, unopposable will, immortal, with no rival left anywhere, arranging every living thing in Middle-earth according to a plan that never changes and never ends, for as long as the world lasts. No war, because there is nobody left to fight. No history, because nothing new is permitted to happen. Just order forever. And the free peoples do not get wiped out, they get absorbed. That is what was actually at stake on that mountain. Not a battle, not a kingdom, the possibility that anything could ever be different again. And it came down to a creature nobody pitied, tripping.
So there they are, 10 questions, and I hope at least a couple of the answers annoyed you because that means you were thinking about them properly. And I want to say one thing about why these questions matter rather than just being fun. When you line them all up, they say something consistent. Almost every clever shortcut fails. The sea fails, the eagles fail, taking the ring fails even when a good person takes it, even when they win. Every plan built on power collapses without exception, and the 2 things that actually work, the only 2, are a hobbit deciding to carry something he did not want, and another hobbit deciding not to kill something he had every right to kill. That is it. That is the whole engine of the story. Tolkien spent decades building the most detailed world in fiction, filled it with kings and wizards and armies and rings of power, and then made the entire thing hinge on a small act of mercy in the dark that nobody witnessed and nobody thanked anyone for. So, which one got you? Which answer do you disagree with? Because I would put money on at least one of these ending up in the comments as an argument, and honestly, the last few videos have had some of the best lore discussions I have seen anywhere. As always, I'm always listening for new lore details in the comments. Some of you actually surprise me with things I've never heard of before. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.